Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Zoom at 8. My name is Julianne Peterson, and I am your host every Tuesday night for Zoom at 8. I am a loan officer for Old Capital Lending, and we have been doing loans for 38 years. So it gives us a little cred, street cred, when it comes to doing multifamily deals, whether it is on the general partner side, I get involved with that. If it's on the limited partner side, I get involved with that. If it gets to capital raising, I get involved with that as well. So I'm here to help you. If you're looking at a deal, I would love the opportunity to be your lender of choice. All I need from you is your T12, your rent roll, the OM, and if you're new, that means offering memorandum, and your underwriting. If you're not familiar with underwriting, we're here to help you. So there are lots and lots of underwriting models that we can introduce you to. So we'll take a look at that and we will give you a quote. All right. People ask me all the time, can you send me what the list of the pricing? Okay, every deal is different. Okay, and those sheets that you get from lenders are good for the minute that they were printed. Not even 2 hours later, when the 10-year treasury shows up, it changes from minute to minute. So we really want to have a conversation with you and go over the deal, look at how you're underwriting, how our appraisers will underwrite, and then get you the information, and you can then put in a LOI or if you're even in best and final. So would love to have that opportunity. Now, at Zoom at 8, this is the place you come if you don't have a Rolodex. And I said it last week. If you don't know what a Rolodex is because you're too young, well, welcome. A Rolodex is where you put all your contact information of people that you do business with. So if you don't have that because you're new to multifamily or to doing deals in commercial, you can find them here. Let's get on with the show. I am so thankful that Joanna Garzilli is here. And this is going to be a little bit different than what you guys are used to hearing about. Why? Because we always get onto business. We don't get into the heart. We don't get behind the scenes and talk about what it is that drives our decisions. So tonight, Joanna is here with us. Joanna is an award-winning author of Big Miracles, the 11 Spiritual Rules for Ultimate Success. She's also the author of Unleash the Psychic in You and a host of the Looking Glass podcast for artists who are intuitive and want to excel in their craft. She is an intuitive coach and counselor whose clients have included Monica Lewinsky, Goldie Hawn, Ernie Banks, who is a Baseball Hall of Fame. She has been featured on national and international media, including Hallmark's Home and Family, the Washington Post, BBC News, Daily Mail, NPR, Fox News, and many, many more publications. So most recently, she's headed up a communications and marketing for a trust company. She's helping it grow. She was helping it grow from 500 million and to when she left at 1.5 billion. So, and those were in assets. So she lives with her husband, Nick, and her son, Dominic, in Scottsdale, and she enjoys HBO, inspirational sports movies, and hearing the ocean waves. Now, the ocean waves you can't hear those in Scottsdale, but, you probably could have heard them this weekend if you were at the hurricane. So anyway, it is my great pleasure to have Joanna here with us tonight to kind of talk to you about what it looks like to maximize your intuition, like how to hone your intuitive skills in this community. So Joanna, I'm so glad you're here.
Julianne, thank you for that amazing introduction.
Well, I want to make sure that everybody gives you all of our attention. So if you guys would be so kind, go up to the right-hand side. There should be a little view, a box, about 9 little boxes, and just put on speaker view. So you should see me, and now once Joanna says something, you'll see her. So Joanna, tell us a little bit about yourself other than what we just heard. I want to know more about this intuitiveness. How, yeah, you used to work with a company, and probably didn't speak to your heart so much, right? And you really are somebody that wants to be in touch because it drives you. It drives your decisions. In business, we don't normally look at things like that. We're really kind of shut off. So I want you to help us understand how to be intuitive.
Well, I just want to go back a step in terms of that thing of trusting intuition. And I feel, well, for a start, if I hadn't gone and worked at the trust company, I wouldn't have met you. And so I just look at it, I feel a little bit like Lassie because I've always been called again because I have this thing of following my heart and listening to my intuition. I've taken many different paths and journeys, and I've just learned to trust that process because I think from how we connected and the multifamily community, for example, my understanding is for many of the people that we know in the community, perhaps they were a professional, they were in IT, they were in corporate, and then the questions typically that would come up are, okay, like, this is good, but as I'm evolving and growing and I want to experience more in my life, why am I not doing this for myself? Or, my core values now, as I look at things, are having a family, my family first, being able to leave a legacy, to be able to take care of my loved ones. And so that would better serve me working, say, in multifamily or doing something where having more control over one's career than being in corporate and, or being on a professional path. I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think everything has its season. But a lot of the time, people stay in things longer, say, than they should if they're very logical, analytical. And sometimes then when they've experienced pain in their lives, they're going to make a trigger decision because their pain body has been activated. And I'll talk more afterwards about the pain body and about how to listen to that. And that really, when we are in tune, that one could avoid at points picking the wrong type of general partners, going into a deal that doesn't best serve one, because perhaps somebody is out there talking and saying, hey, this is a great deal, this is the best deal ever. Well, maybe it is for one person, but it isn't for someone else. And I think be able to check in and really feel certain in that decision-making process, even if it doesn't work out exactly the way it wants, perhaps there are valuable lessons to learn from going into that deal, mistakes that are made that maybe it feels like, oh gosh, I lost money on that deal, or that partner was a real pain to deal with. But maybe it teaches things that later on in a bigger deal are going to save a lot more money, are going to set one up for a much better experience. So I think those are all sort of different factors to think about. But I've gone back and forth over the years from, in London, my first, well, my very, very first job was working in entertainment PR. And then I did some stuff because all my family background, like how my family was successful, was in multifamily. I mean, my grandpa, my dad's dad, was a self-made multimillionaire who he came from Poland with nothing, 7 brothers and sisters, came to London, and then he got a scholarship to London School of Economics. His name was Louis, but I call him Lulu. And then he became a boxer and he did fashion. And then I remember as a kid being taken to where we call them blocks of flats in London and in Chiswick. There was Watchfield Court, and that had like 750 units. And I remember I get taken from building to building with my grandpa, with my dad, and I saw how they ran out all of that and did that. So, and then my mum did real estate too, but on the residential side, and my aunt as well. So I got to see that whole experience. I worked in corporate finance in the City of London, and I worked for an M&A boutique. And the founder of that M&A boutique, John MacArthur, he was actually Mohammed Al Fayed and Dodi Al Fayed, who owned Harrods, their personal financial advisor. Back in the day, it was like quite patriarchal, sort of in London, where I said the only way I'm going to take this job is if I can wear pants as well, to have the option to wear, that we say trousers in England, because I didn't want to have to only wear a skirt. It was like very, very old school, old boy network in City of London. You had to really fight for things for that, like more open in America. Then I ended up in like being on that whole soap. I was from a teenage years, London, like the London socialite scene. It was like when Ivanka Trump came to London, I looked after her and took her out and did all this stuff. We did London Club Awards. So I had this like made my first movie when I was 24, 25 years old, and got national distribution and to the equivalent, sold to the equivalent of NBC, like network TV. But then I had what I would call I guess sort of like a spiritual awakening, so to speak, where I was very pragmatic, very down to earth. I was definitely into, like I said, the London party scene. Didn't do any of the drugs or anything, but I just like to stay out late and like do my thing. And like, hello, darling. Yeah. I was like a little bit pretentious. Worked on that. But the long and the short of it, one night I was in this club called Subterranea in London, and I was standing there and I looked out from the stage and I was like, what am I doing here? Then I got tonsillitis, chickenpox, and then I went off on this journey around the world, connecting with different shamans and healers, and coming back to the question I had when I was 6 years old. Well, what is the meaning of life? Why am I here? How can I serve a greater purpose? And then I didn't plan to go and write these books and do this whole journey as an intuitive, and then being labeled as a psychic. Like I became like known as like the psychic to see in Los Angeles and doing that whole thing. So I've gone very much always where I feel like it's important to have both. I've been like one end very grounded in numbers and business and that, and I think that is critical. And then I've had this very more sort of esoteric, what you'd call woo-woo, out there, airy fairy. But I like to think of sort of intuition is more from a metaphysical standpoint, and always to bring it back to making smart decisions, weighing everything up. Don't only rely on intuition, because I think it needs to be a fusion of practical and grounded. And really, when your intuition's working well, you're taking in the whole picture. You are making decisions holistically, and then you feel really empowered in that.
All right.
I know.
So that was, I mean, I love to hear what you have been doing and how you've been impacting other people, right? I mean, that's what, here at Zoom at 8, we're really here to help people learn and how you can impact other people. And so, we visited and had a great time, and what we were going to talk about today. And I think I really want to hear, because everybody's looking for partners. I have a partner, and if I were to do it again, I wouldn't have used that partner. I wouldn't have worked with that one particular partner. And what I would really like for you to help me and the other folks in the room is, how do you decide that I'm making the right decision with this person? Because honestly, had I seen this months before, I would have said absolutely not. I think that people show up a little bit differently when there's opportunities or there's money involved. So you being an intuitive, somebody who's a little bit on the psychic side, how can you help us? How can you share with us some of the steps that many of us need to be taking in order to figure out, is this person the right fit for me and my team, for my company? Because I think a lot of us, like me, have lost touch with the feeling side of things, the dreaming side of things. A lot of us, like you mentioned, want to do things that are outside of the corporate structure, but there's some uncertainty in that. So we may be grabbing onto people or opportunities that could not serve us in the future. So maybe you could walk us through whether it's steps or what your thoughts are on that.
So, Julianne, first of all, everyone has intuition. I think of it, it's a muscle. And I liken it to, I'm a terrible singer, by the way. So when I give this example of Stevie, everyone can sing, but not everyone can sing like Stevie Wonder, or I don't know, like people into Taylor Swift or so, but everyone has that intuition, and it is, and you don't have to be exceptional. I would say that that's something that it's a gift for me, and then I've worked that muscle. But absolutely, over the years, I have trained so many people to trust their own intuition, to understand what that skill set is, how to be able to see, to hear, to feel, and just to know, like with an absolute certainty, when to make a certain choice. So just from that first standpoint, okay, with the idea of everyone has that gift of intuition, just like going to the gym, I'm going to go and use those muscles. And then from there, setting that intention, the first thing that one needs to do to be able to trust your intuition, because think about it. First of all, when we are so outward focused, I know, like, I like to stay informed. But if I hop on and I ingest too much stuff that's going on geopolitically, macroeconomically, yeah, I want to take that information in. But if I overload with it, then I'm going to, like, maybe fear's going to get triggered because someone says, oh my gosh, this thing's going to happen in the market, or this, that, whatever the doom and gloom is, and then shutting down. And then listening to other people around oneself who maybe really don't know your entire situation for making a good choice. So being able to come back to oneself and to be able to listen to that quiet voice of intuition, because when we're not listening to it, it sounds very faint because, again, we've been listening to other things. So that first step is to center, ground, and connect. And there's different ways to center, ground, and connect. But for some people, they want to go do a yoga class or do a silent meditation retreat. Like, a lot of people don't have time to do that. I mean, if someone, like, that's great, where I've seen people on, on Instagram that say, I'm going off and I'm doing a 9-day meditation retreat. Yeah, if someone's running a business or they're in a job or they have a few kids or like cash, they're managing money and they're not a trust fund kid, or they're not, they're not single. They don't have that luxury.
Sure.
So I look at it just keeping it really, really, really simple in terms of, for me at this, like, how do I get centered? Sometimes, like, when I get up in the morning, I'll just sit quietly. For me, I like having a cup of black coffee. I just sit and I'm quiet and I listen. Now, years ago, I used to go and throw a whole load of crystals over myself and that, and be like, I got to go off to Peru.
That's the woo-woo.
And yeah, and I love that. And it worked, right? It works. But I think it's like, you have to do things from a place of wherever you're at and what works for you, and that's a very personal thing. So on the most simple form, it could be walking, just going outside and taking a 5-minute walk. If one's in a situation where you've got to make a decision, or you feel like you're up against the wall with something, it's when energy, I know I'm jumping around all over the place, but let's say, for example, you're in a meeting with someone and you're doing like a Zoom to look at something for a potential partnership. And just, you start feeling like, God, I'm feeling agitated, or feel closed in. I feel like I want to get off this call. Maybe it's just like, that is a sign from one's body or one's intuition saying, you know what, this doesn't feel so good right now. Maybe it's just like, let me check in with myself to just get a clear connection and see, am I being triggered by something the other person's saying? Is it really that this situation isn't a fit for me? And then just stepping away from the computer for a moment. If it's an in-person meeting, just oh, I've just got to go to the restroom. Going and taking a moment just to, like, have that break in energy to recenter again. I find just doing any form of exercise is a great way, again, to center, ground, and connect. I feel like there's a lot of things just from everyday life. Some people, if they like writing, can do some journaling. Here's what's on my mind. Other people don't like writing, or if someone's really overwhelmed because they have been screwed over in a deal. I mean, let me just tell you, a few years back, I was it was like sort of at a point when I was at like that peak of success for myself, where I was about to sign a big publishing deal, my coaching practice, go, really great. I was traveling all over, doing a lot of speaking gigs and big celebrity clients. And my husband had said, like, there's this opportunity for a deal to go into something. This was like do a business. And I didn't stand up and listen to my intuition. I sort of like I went into people pleasing. Now with this, it's very good. So I would say another thing to do for oneself is the more honest you are with yourself about some of your weaknesses or your character traits, then you will not make poor choices. But if you go, oh, everything's fine, and you stuff down what you talked about before, the feelings. So for me, I've always had a weakness with people pleasing. I've wanted to jump through hoops to be approved and loved by my dad. So that, because of people pleasing, went ahead with this deal. All those years I built my business, took money from that directly, went and signed leases and things on equipment for doing this whole business in an industry that I didn't know, without doing due diligence, and just plummeted at that point into debt. Like, lost everything and fell into a lot of debt. It was horrible. I remember lying on the floor of where I lived, like literally almost just like freaking out, going, oh my gosh, what did I do? I'm normally pretty calm, like, to think, what happened here? I didn't listen to my intuition. At that point, I was guiding a lot of people intuitively. So sometimes it's like, you may find you're good at guiding and helping other people, but you can still get tripped up. So this is why I just come back to those most important things. Let me just come back again to something throws you off in the day. Okay, I'm thrown off. Just acknowledge you're thrown off and recenter. Okay, what do you need to do to ground yourself? Like we said, go for a walk, take a moment to pause, not look at all stuff that's happening on YouTube or whatever news network you look at, and then connect. I think that for me, that is ultimately, look at it, it's a relationship with God, spirit, higher self, higher power, just finding that way that resonates. How will you know that you are connected? Because you're going to feel a sense of, even in, say, the eye of a storm, where stuff could be going crazy and things that are very uncertain, you will feel calm. There will just be I just know everything's going to be okay. Or this bad thing happened. Okay, this bad thing happened because I needed to learn this lesson. I wasn't aware. I've got to forgive myself because I didn't know what I didn't know. What do I need to do next? And then from there, sometimes a lot of the time people will, you could say, pray when they're in emergency or panic. I look at, like, prayer is really just appreciation and gratitude each day for yourself, for things that are working in your life. And a lot of the time when we make, say, a prayer or a request, you could say, to spirit, sometimes the answer is going to come quickly, but if our emotions in the way, we're not going to get that answer. We're just not. So this is where I come back to, with anything, with a deal now at this point in my life, when someone says the clock's ticking, well, you're going to miss out, or it's not going to be there, then I just say, oh, well, it's not going to be there. My loss. Oh, we can only get it this price and this thing. Okay, well, that's not going to work for me. And so I think really trusting in that.
Yeah, I think the thing is that a lot of us don't trust ourselves, right? Because some of us have not been in this space for very long. A lot of us are coming in and trying to figure out where we fit. And in a time like this, where Business has really gone down. It's a time for looking for partnerships and to be spending that critical time. And as I've mentioned to many of you, a partnership needs to take time. It's not something you want to do overnight. You're going to be married to these partners for a very long time. And I know for me, when I get that little feeling like that's not right, it's not my vision, it's not my value, I have a hard time, and I'm just being honest here about stepping back and saying, I don't think this is the right fit for me. Why? Because I'm a maybe, like you mentioned, Joanna, a people person, a people pleaser. And I think, and that's what I'm looking for you to help us, you know, how do we identify that feeling that, oh, this is not good? And, it's even like going to some of the conferences where you need to excuse yourself. And it's really, really difficult. And you talk about honing your intuitive self. I've heard a couple things, but how do we get better at that? Especially when we're looking for these partners, it's really critical that we understand how to do this. What other methods can you help us with on that?
I think with intuition, again, it's like I said, it's a muscle. So it's about daily practice. And so, yeah, what we talked about before, evaluating what type of person are you? Well, that if you are a lot of people that I see who are in this space in multifamily, who are entrepreneurial, are very focused and have an understanding, a sense of self-awareness and
Mm,
personal development. And and so with that, who you are as a person is going to be evolving. I think that
mhm,
yes, maybe the core of you, certain characteristics that are strong in you and me and us from a very young age. And then, I mean, if I look at how I was or who I was as a teenager versus who I am now, yes, like I'm still very enthusiastic and outgoing at points, but I'm also, I guess, in a way, I'm in some ways I'm more introverted way or now, or I like more quiet time. So I think just being able to really fall in love with knowing yourself and just being able to go like,
mm,
who am I? Why do I want what I want? Because I really
mm,
did that. I was driven at my in the job at the trust company. Part of me, there was a point where I was doing really, really well there, and then I got fixated on becoming. I was head of communications and marketing, but I was fixated on becoming CMO. I got to become CMO. I got to be a CMO. I want to do this. Like it became when I slowed down enough, I really looked because of something else that happened in my where, and that's a whole nother story. But why did I why did I look at this? Because when Christmas time, my crypto account, my Coinbase was hacked, a
mm,
lot of money was stolen, and I guess it just made me start look like some of that money that was invested was from my father. Oh, it was just like
mm,
horrible. Like it was horrible. And but along and the short, I started really soul searching.
mm,
And then I went, but I don't even want that. Like I don't want to be like my path overall is not to stay in the retirement industry. A lot
mhm.
of that was about people pleasing. Um,
So
and so
self-awareness is really what I'm
yes,
hearing you saying is self-awareness and how do you connect with yourself? I think,
yes,
what we've experienced over the last couple of years is a get rich quick mentality.
it's impossible.
And again, talking about going from corporate to more entrepreneurial, this dream, and how is this really where you're supposed to be right now? Are you supposed to be listening? Are you supposed to be managing your time in this, or am I wasting my time? Is this really going to pay off for me? And that fear that comes up because there's not a lot going on right now.
So the
Um,
thing is, you need to give one needs to give oneself like a run. And again, this is why I think it's very important with any type of like what you're saying, going into some type of partnership or deal, it is a relationship. Now, I know if one invests in a syndicate or does something like that, and maybe it's someone that's more of a no-name, but even then, I mean, we've seen there's some big names in the industry that still, they're going to get their fee regardless in the syndicate. And so again, I think it just comes back to self-awareness. Really look at yourself, who you are, what do you want? Look at, okay, what are my weaknesses? Where, people who are, say, at these conferences, a lot of the time, because I've seen the overlap from some of these conferences with like personal development, sort of self-help transformation, they know how to sell, they know how to get the triggers to get you to buy emotionally. Now, I know a lot of people in this community are not emotional buyers, they're very logical and pragmatic, but still, someone who is very masterful at selling can hit that sort of trigger point, and the next thing you know, it's like, okay, we're going into this deal. And so I think it's very important at a minimum to decide what is that time frame that I am going to make a decision, decide whether to go into a partnership. So you're not jumping in too quickly, but you're not waiting and waiting where you miss the boat on an opportunity and you're procrastinating. So decide, what is that time frame? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 30 days? Is it 90 days? Like, how long? Is it a year? How long do you need that you want to get to know someone? And then from there, when you do go into that relationship, if something does go wrong, maybe it's something beyond that other person's control, or maybe it's something that you consider, like in a marriage, richer and poorer, sickness and health, better and worse. You figure out and you work through it, and you get stronger together in those partnerships. You don't just then go and desert that person or that group in that partnership. But I think, like, you want to feel really good going into it. And there is sort of like, there is no perfect partnership, I think, to go into. It's sort of like, I guess, like dating.
Really
people like, you want to check the box on everything, but well, as soon as someone's giving you pressure, I would say, like, no, just like, no, this isn't for me. And then in terms of the feeling, like, again, this comes to the simplest thing of knowing a difference when you're triggered from a past trauma of being screwed over in a relationship, or just something else going wrong in your life. How will you know? Because someone might say something that's quite rational, and you're going to have a knee-jerk reaction.
That's true.
And go, oh, okay, hang on a minute. I am reacting emotionally here. That just means I need to give myself more time to make this decision.
Yeah, I agree with that.
To feel good about it.
All right, well, we do need to wrap up here. Is there anybody in the room that has a question on intuitive coaching, how you can get to your inner self to make decisions for you that will feed you in a very healthy way, as opposed to making decisions that could be, long-term deficit to yourself? Anybody in the house that needs to ask a question?
I see some people put things in the chat.
Paula has a question.
Yes. Hello. Thank you, Julie. And I appreciate the talk. That's really wonderful that you talk about it, Joanna. I really appreciate it. One of the questions I had, as far as your intuition on a deal, you said to take a walk and to break that energy. Are you talking about doing some type of grounding exercise? Is that what the goal is? In order to touch like negatively charged ground or something to get you out of the energy of where you're interacting with? Is that the goal of that?
I think that it's really important. Everyone has a different level of what works for them to feel in tune. So it can be as simple as, for someone where they might be like, well, I have to go to a yoga class to go into, you don't have to. I mean, it can be as simple as going for a walk. Really,
just breaking
like,
that energy, right?
So say, for example, if I'm stuck on the sand, like, oh, what do? I need to make a decision on whatever the thing is. And I know as I walk out of my front door, I don't have clarity. I feel anxious. I feel uncertain. But as I walk, as I look at things around me, as I take each step, I just make that decision, say, I'm going to let go of the fear. I feel tightness in my chest. oh, I'm just going to take a deep breath and let it go. Oh, look at that little rabbit running over there. I mean, whatever the thing is. And then I'm going to, as I really let go, it might not be right away. It might be when I get back an hour later and I'm throwing some, I'm just giving like a random thing. I'm throwing some laundry on and suddenly I go, that's what I need to do. I need to DM this person right now. Oh, I need to connect this person with this person. You know, I'll sometimes be in the car and I'm like, oh, I have to introduce these two people to each other. I have to do this thing or that thing. That's when I know it's my intuition, because it's inspired and it's not coming from a place of got to figure it out, got to figure it out. Exactly. So anything really that allows you to like let go and trust in that process. Yes, there are meditations and metaphysical things one can do, a lot of stuff that is more esoteric, but again, it doesn't have to be. That's like more advanced spiritual stuff, but it doesn't need to be that.
Yeah. All right, Tia, what do you got? And then we're going to wrap this up. We're on to the next.
Thank you.
So I've
you,
had a
Paula.
lot of partnerships in the past that have been either successful or not successful and been burned financially and otherwise. So there's always something to draw upon in terms of the past. So I know that distinguishing the past from what is current is sort of my job as a human being on the planet, distinguishing when I'm in the past and when I'm bringing it into the present or the future, right? So, and making choices. But I know that one thing I do know for sure is that I have a tendency to want to, you know, I'm from Los Angeles and I have a kid who goes to school, private school, and, you know, all the song and dance at all these schools want you to go to them and spend $40,000 and you get there and it's always a different story. So, you know, you do the best with what you end up with is how it ends up being. So what I want to say is, I think I judge people based on their character, not so much on their song and dance that they do. And also, I also look at how well do they deal with conflict. Because at the end of the day, everyone's great when it's great. It's at who people are when it's not. That is the most important thing to me, because that's when you know who you're dealing with. So how well do you deal with conflict? How well are you willing to do what it takes to make it a workable situation when you're triggered and when they're triggered? How well do people manage their own responsibility around their own stuff? You want that person who has some level of consciousness about that process. That's kind of a hard thing to distinguish when you're talking about a deal that's immediate. Like right now, here's the deal. And you don't necessarily know these people. So I guess, you know, you have spoken a lot about a bit of this, but I have sometimes a difficult time trusting my so-called intuition versus my head. And I think that's a learning curve for me that I've had to do for a while now, to get to a place where I trust myself and I trust that even when it's not good, that I can trust that I will be able to handle the situation when it's not.
I think that, Tia, I think you make some really great points. And what I hear when I listen to you, you are very in tune. You are very, very aware. And it's important not to feel pressured. Like when you're saying, oh, well, if I have to make a decision quickly, then I think it's just trusting as well, saying, you know, there is always going to be another deal. I mean, there is. Because it's sort of like, I look at it like when I was doing a lot of crypto trading in 2021, I did close to 1,000 trades. And it would always be FOMO, you know, that fear of missing out. I'm not going to it doesn't matter whether it's the stock market, whether it's taking a certain, like, okay, oh, well, I'm going to miss that deal and I'll hold out for another deal. Because every time I've seen, like my husband like, oh my God, we didn't get in there on that deal. Yeah, and then the market corrects. I mean, again, we're not getting the whole predictions of stuff, but I mean, I think we've got a crazy amount of volatility coming ahead. I think there's a big correction coming.
Certainly follow your intuition and how it makes you feel. What's that immediate reaction, I think. And Tia, I think you do a great job with that. Well, Well, listen, we do need to keep going here. So thank you so much for joining us,
Thank you,
Joanna. I
Julianne.
so appreciate you.